And with this, we're done with managing our application. Now, there is so much you can do, but you hopefully got a good overview of the different features and the ecosystem here. Now, I want to come back to one thing I mentioned earlier, multiple projects. Now, I mentioned that inside of an Angular project, or folder, I should say, you can have multiple projects. Now, you start with one project, but you can actually add a new one with ng-generate, and then you can generate one of two project types, a library or an application. Now, let's start with an application here. If I type ng-generate application, and I maybe name this backend, because let's say I have my backend UI for my administrators and a frontend UI for my end users. If I hit enter here, this will go ahead and ask me the same questions I got when I created this project, whether I want to add routing and which style preprocessor I want to use. And now you see it adds a new projects folder here, and in that projects folder, it has this subfolder named backend, which is the name I chose, which basically has a new Angular project in it. A bit slimmer because they share the same root Angular JSON file and package JSON file here, but its own dedicated config files, its own source folder, and in there, basically what we already know. This is a separate Angular application. Now we could serve this with ng-serve, and then project equals backend. This is important, of course, otherwise ng-serve wouldn't know that it should use this project. You can set the default project Angular serve or ng-serve or any other command we'll use in the Angular JSON file. There at the very bottom, you have this default project setting, which in my case is set to my starting project, Angular config. And if you set this, then ng-serve or ng-build without any extra flag will always run against this project. Here I ran it against backend, so unsurprisingly, if I visit localhost 4200, I now see this brand new project, backend, being served here. Now, you could argue that this is an ugly project structure though. Having a projects folder as part of our other main project, I'm not too happy with this. Well, we can do better. Let's go back to the main terminal and to the folder where we create our new Angular projects. And now let's create a new one, ng-new, and now let's say we're building a Angular shop. But it's totally up to you. This is just a dummy name. Now, you might remember that there is --help, which you can use to run some commands, and there was a create-application flag. And I will set this here to false. Now, if we now run this, something interesting will happen. It now will generate some files, but actually less files than before. It will install some dependencies, but it will not create a brand new Angular application by default. Instead, let's wait for this to finish and see what it gives us. Instead, once it finishes, it gives us a folder that looks like this. So we have the config files we know, but of course the app folder is missing. And now indeed here we can simply run ng-generate application, for example, backend. And what it will do now is it will create that new projects folder thereafter and create it in there. So you see, here it is. So now we have that cleaner structure, which is nice if you have multiple Angular projects in one root folder. Now every project will have its own subfolder in the projects folder, which I would argue is cleaner than what we had before. So in case you want to work with multiple projects inside of one Angular managed folder, this is how I would recommend that you do it. Create the project with ng-new, your name, and then --create-application set to false. And thereafter add your different applications with the ng-generate command. Now also, of course, you can not just generate applications, so web applications, you can also generate libraries. So let's take a closer look at that. To create a library, we run ng-generate library, an alternative to application. In this case, let's say my button, because it's an amazing library where I will share my own custom button component, which every other application should be able to use. And that's maybe important. What is a library? A library differs from an application such that you still write Angular code in there, you still build Angular components and so on. You can group them with modules. You can add directives. That does not change, but it's not meant to run standalone as a web application. Instead, it's meant to have some code that can be shared across multiple Angular web applications. So something like Angular Material. Angular Material is an Angular library. It comes with a bunch of built-in components, and you can use these components in any application. So this is an Angular library, and you can build your own. Now, we already made our first steps by creating it with the ng-generate library command. You see, you generally get the same as before, but there are some differences. For example, we have an ng-package.json file, which in the end allows us to configure this library in a certain way. In the source folder, we have a public API TS file where we in the end export the different things that make up our library. And in the lib folder, we got some starting files. For example, a MyButton component where we can write our own library component, already added to a module, and also a service which you can or cannot use. Now, to learn all about library creation, of course, as always, the official docs are your friends. Under Techniques, Angular Libraries, Creating Libraries, you can learn all about creating and also deploying, publishing your own custom libraries to NPM. For that, you will also need an NPM account though. So this is in the end something you can also do. And building a library really is straightforward. Here, for example, I could build my own custom button, which of course is super amazing. There, I will use ng-content so that users can pass in anything they want between my custom button tags. And that's it. So of course, the most amazing button in the world has no styles, no extra features. You absolutely need this library. Now, with that, we already would have a very basic library, which we now can configure. And again, the official docs can help you there to learn about how to exactly configure this. And with this, we are also able to build libraries and share them across either our own Angular applications or also publish them to NPM to share them with others. And this is it for this module. Now, there is always more you can cover, but I found it important to also point you at the official docs so that you know where you can dive deeper if something is unclear or you are interested in one specific features. Because Angular is a huge topic. It's the framework, and then as you saw in this module, the entire CLI ecosystem thing. That's why some people refer to Angular as a platform, because it's more than just a framework. It's also all these extra tools and helpers and features. And this ecosystem, of course, also keeps on evolving, which is why the official docs are a great resource to dive into the specific features you might be interested in. Now, of course, this course is about Angular, the framework, and how we build web applications with it. That always was the heart of the course, and that is honestly what most developers are interested in. You want to learn how to write and build Angular applications. But if you want to take your knowledge to the next step and maybe get a bit more productive with all these CLI commands, with deployment, with maybe custom schematics and so on, then this module hopefully showed you what you can do there, where you can learn more, and how to read all these configuration files, how to use all these commands, how to manage your projects. So I hope this was helpful.